6 o'clock. We have a quorum present. We call the meeting to order. First item is public input. No public input for the moment. We'll go to minutes. Entertain a motion for acceptance of the Finance Committee meeting of July 9th.
So moved, Jim.
Second.
Any changes, corrections, or whatever?
Technically, you can't make the motion on the finance meeting, you weren't there.
Oh, finance, you're right. Okay, I'll second. Absolutely right.
Move to approve.
Call it.
None? Any, all in favor, say aye. There was a note, a typo in the number 3, the second paragraph there, the word is changes in plans as opposed to is plans. But that's just a typo being corrected. The next minutes are July 9th, the special board meeting. Entertain a motion for acceptance or approval.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any corrections, additions?
I have a question,
Sure.
maybe a correction. On page 2,
Yes.
on the next scheduled meeting, the very last sentence where it says Chairman Klepper, et cetera, et cetera. It says engineering, insurance, liability, and updating the policies and procedures manual. Is that supposed to be policies and procedures, or was it the bylaws?
It's our policies and procedures, specifically was for some financial information.
Okay.
Is what that was referring
So
to.
that's correct then?
Yes.
All right.
And the typo in the first line?
It's help instead of help. Yes.
You got the typo above?
Yeah.
Okay.
We got that squared. Any other changes? All in favor of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Approved. Executive Director's Report. Hannah?
We have a positive note. Notice that the water production is up.
Yes.
So back up into more average amounts of usage compared to last year. Last year was quite a drop in overall usage for the year. So hopefully we'll be continuing a trend where we're getting more back to normal. Bonds, I wanted to mention, we're working on 2 right now. One is the $9 million bond. I just wanted to give you, this is what I'm looking for, a drawdown schedule. And in this bond, we also had the Maple Ave project, which was about $1.6 million. We pulled that out of the $9 million bond and put it into the Clean Water Finance Agency since we finally got our certificate of authorization. So we're going forward with that. And that should be available like around the end of August. But on Sandy's suggestion, she's saying we've got such great rates with this bond, rather than just reducing the bond amount to go into the following year's projects, which is fiscal year 17, and use some of this bond proceed for those projects. So not approval at this meeting, but for next meeting when we actually approve the bond, if the board would consider going for the full $9 million, which we've already approved. And
That's the final rate
That-
will be at that point.
right, and the final rate will be at that point, but are looking to use the full $9 million in this case from the bank bond, considering we've got extremely low rates.
So $160,000 more.
You put that in writing, the reason why you're asking for it.
Sure. And as I said, we're going to be going forward with a clean water finance bond for Maple Avenue. Trihalomethanes, we are working on a letter. Our PR person strongly suggests that we wait on the letter until after we get the results of the sample. We send the letter first, since we have 30 days to do the actual notification. We can send the letter out first with our explanation and then send out the required notification.
Sounds good.
So I said it would make, said you don't really want a lot of time lapse in between.
Right.
Because that tends to confuse people. The squash. We're having some problems on timing. It's slowed down considerably. The contractor has not done anything wrong, he's just acting fairly slowly on the project. Did send him a letter saying we are going to be looking for liquidated damages. Right now, he's having some problems getting the samples to pass on the bypass piping, so it's taking an extra week just to get that done. So we have to put in the lower half of the bypass piping. It's all going to be chlorinated and tested and so on before it can be put in service. So hopefully that'll be next week.
It says PAR is working with, who, are you contacting, and what kind of formal contact do we have with the vendor to explain that if they really are gonna screw up, they're jeopardizing their future with us as a contractor? Why are they doing this?
As Pam said, the quality of the work at this point isn't in question, it's the timing.
Yeah.
And I think they may have misjudged, or they may have been ambitious as to how quick they were going to proceed with it. As Pam said, if you disinfect the pipe, take a sample, there's pretty much a week going between the process and waiting for the lab results. So we ended up with a sample that didn't pass, we had to do it over again. So right there, it's almost 2 weeks.
Okay.
A week and a half, 2 weeks. There have been some issues which, we're fortunate we have our engineering services on site and documented everything. So it's an effort issue. Also, that we're going to get back in and get moving on it as soon as the samples pass. There's about 650 feet of pipe left to install, which is the last leg down to Papa Squash, where it comes the pipeline, existing pipeline comes out at what's called Pearson property through that easement, and that's the piece they have left to do. There's a couple of homeowners services that we have to connect. That's why that water has to be viable before they can shut down the other leg. So that's been dragging.
All right.
They know we have some issues on it. As Pam said, it's been documented.
All right.
Isn't this the same outfit we had trouble with on Ferry Road?
Excuse me?
Isn't it the same outfit we had some troubles with on Ferry Road?
I understand that, yeah. But I think one of the issues is the quality of work versus timing. Quality of work, I'm going to have an issue with at this point in time.
But they're both part of the contract.
They're both part of the contract, and they'll pay. The quality of work is, we can't accept anything less than what we expect to accept on quality of work. The timing, yes, the state's not thrilled with it because we planned to have that seeded and then be out of there by now, long before now, and they're not. So they'll have to suffer the consequences because they have a responsibility to make sure that grass grows, which means they're going to have to be back in there in September probably to reseed it again. So it snowballs on their responsibilities to follow through. So again, we're on record as not being happy and follow the process.
Plus, in the end, it does cost them more money to delay, not just the liquidated damages, but just for the amount of work that they have left to do and the taking care of the property afterwards. It's going to end up costing them more money.
Doesn't it cost us more money too?
Not with the liquidated damages. We'll recoup any of our expenses. Our expense would be just the inspection services.
Well, should we consider, if this is a contractor we've had difficulty with before, putting them on warning for future bids?
Oh, most definitely. We've already been discussing that.
They'll come in under another name.
What does it mean to liquidate damages?
That means there's a clause in the contract for every day that they go over the deadline that they pay $1,000 a day.
So it's a penalty for it.
It's a penalty, but you usually have to invoke it legally, so it's usually a fairly protracted situation. So typically you try to work with the contractor so you don't have to do that. And they haven't gotten there yet.
So if we don't invoke that, we do suffer a financial penalty because it's taking more of our time to supervise them.
Well, at this point in time, we have told them we will invoke it. because they haven't picked up the work that they need to do.
But we haven't invoked it.
We've actually sent them a letter saying we are. We haven't started the legal procedures yet until we get to the next stage.
Okay?
Mr. Chairman, before you leave that, if I may, I had a question last month about some settlement issues at the intersection on the 5th of July. I don't remember me bringing it up. The fire chief had to respond, put barrels out there. My question, did anyone look into that, why that settled? I know I talked to Sue. I left a message for you, Sue. Going by a couple of times, there were metal plates there, and now it's asphalt over. So my simple question was that fire chief responded to a situation where there was some settlement, serious enough to put barrels.
Yeah,
And I'd asked that we look into it. Did anyone look into whether it was, not compacted or whatever? Did anybody?
Ken has actually been working with the engineer on site there, and he did talk to him about it.
Yeah, that happened, Frank. I got the call that night. There were two issues. One, they had steel plated. Back in the middle of June, they installed a double check valve underground to make a connection, and they had the hole plated over. And with the arrival of 4th of July festivities and concerns, the state didn't want the steel plates, so they wanted the whole backfill. So they did. But unfortunately, down where the check valve was, there's also a drain that had to be cut. It was right in our way. So they had put a temporary jumper across on that in plastic. And unfortunately, with the rain event we had, it appears that the fern coat flooded the hole and it dropped. So I had one of the guys go in and put the barrels on. Found about it after the 4th of July, actually.
Yeah, because I think the chief got the call on the 5th or 4th of July night or 5th, early in the 5th on Saturday morning.
Yeah, it was Saturday morning when it came after that. We had that 2.5 inches of rain. And what appears to happen, I don't know specifically, but the engineer does, is where that temporary jumper was put across that fur coat posted, the hole filled with water and everything dropped. And we responded and put the barrels out on that. So,
active God that corner.
yeah.
so it's all set now.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
all, they were back in, they fixed it.
No, I was just concerned that they had not done the job correctly and that caused the suffering.
No, it wasn't that. There was a drain on the scenario. We go through and we have to cut it, and they have to dig it back up again and get back down, so they couldn't leave the drain open. They had to put the jumper on it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The Tucker pipeline, is there a time established when they'll get back to us?
I haven't got an actual deadline yet. We've been going back and forth. People have been on vacation, so they're aware of the project and putting some information together for us.
Sorry I'm late.
That's okay, sir.
That's horrible.
You're on D, Executive Director's Report, second page.
Maple Ave project, we're moving right along. We're actually into Maple Ave right now, starting the cleaning and lining process there. We're looking at South Street and see if it actually may have been lined, previously lined pipe. We're finding that there might have been sections that were lined. So we're doing a more investigation on that piece of main. There's a chance we may not have to do that one.
Excuse me, you said that there were some issues with valves and service locations? Is that finding valves, is that what you mean?
We have some valves that are not holding. They don't close all the way, and you need to dewater the pipe. So we had already planned on replacing some of those, so we have to come up with a little different plan on getting in there and placing those sooner rather than later. There's some services that run in a lot of different areas. They don't run directly off the water main, probably services that were installed maybe in the 20s, when the main didn't go quite as far, and they run through people's yards. And we don't have rights of way for those. We actually have one complex in Barrington where the services on fairly new homes, fairly expensive homes, that the services runs through everybody's yards. And, you know,
West Barrington used to be famous for that.
and we're having difficulty determining rights of way in the town. For some reason, a lot of the contractors may have put in roads that didn't correspond with the actual town maps or the actual town property.
That's fairly common in Barrington.
And so in some cases, it's putting our mains and hydrants in private property. And so we're having some discussions with the fire department as to, we have a couple of homeowners that would like to see their hydrants moved off of their property. And we need to work out things with the fire chief because we don't want to be on private property to end up in the middle of the argument. So we've got a number of things to look at.
Well, I can see moving a hydrant on the public property. What about, are we going to take, by eminent domain, take the right of way to be able to assess the right?
And in some cases, we may have to do that, but this is where we need to maybe sit down and work out some policies for the board to discuss and actually put in action.
Would it make sense to explore whether we can get any general assembly relief stating that if pipes were installed in a location that was thought to be public and they've been there for X number of years, that the Bristol County Water Authority would maintain a de facto right-of-way, even though one was not granted?
The question
You
might be
have to
better.
look into that because
Adverse
the towns,
possession.
you know, the towns have home rule
Oh,
charter.
sure.
So it might be difficult for the state to impose that, but it might be something we need to work on with the towns.
It would be advantageous financially if they got it by adverse possession
Right.
rather than not making money.
That would be a project for Joe.
Because generally, I think you can claim adverse possession after 20 years, but you can't claim it against town or state-owned property,
No, the town can claim it against.
But
property.
this is in private property, that's the issue.
But I understand, but we have maintained our adverse possession across private property for X number of years.
Maybe there's something in the act that created the authority that gives us some kind of leverage.
Well, we do have the right of eminent domain.
But we might not need to enforce that. If we've had a pipe in place for 20 or more years, it would seem to satisfy the requirements for adverse possession.
Yeah,
Certainly for a right of way.
I mean, it's like having a right of way because if the pipe ever breaks, obviously, we gotta go in and fix it, and the people who have the property are gonna want us to come in and fix it.
Right.
The ones next door.
Well, the problem is when it goes through several different properties first to feed the person in the back, the homeowners in the front don't always want to let you in.
So I don't understand, is this causing a problem with the work on Maple Avenue?
We did have one service with that issue, but I think we're getting it resolved. We're finding a way to get in through public property.
This is not unusual.
But this is another situation that we just ran into
These things
recently.
have come up in the past when we put sewers in, we found out a lot of similar kind of issues.
It's not unusual in Warren or Bristol either. We have in the north end, we have sewers that go right through people's houses.
Yeah, I mean, that's how they did stuff a long time ago.
Yep.
Because West Barrington used to be rife with water connections, one house to the other. Someone flush a toilet in one house and someone taking a shower in the other house screams.
But these are things we need to resolve going
Right.
forward, so we'll need to work on some policies as to how we want to handle those.
On your public records request, I've seen the dialogue back and forth with Mr. Mahoney. Are we going to meet the deadline, or will there be a problem?
Today was the deadline for the first set, and we did prepare all of the records.
Okay.
They're available for them to pick up.
All right, so we're moving right
The
in.
next set is going to be much more difficult. It's got a very voluminous request. So,
I'm assuming we're charging him the fullest extent allowed by law.
Yeah.
yes, we are.
Any other questions on Pam's report?
Does he have a right to everything he's requested?
Not everything. Joe reviewed all of the documentation and actually wrote a letter in response as to what was legally available and what wasn't.
And you made a comment about the org chart on the website not being up to date. Is that correct?
There is no org chart on the website. We do have one posted.
But there's an org chart in the annual report, isn't there?
There was one in the annual
And
report.
that's on the
And
website.
that's on the website.
Yes,
That should be,
and that was the same.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to make a statement regarding Mr. Mahoney's correspondence. I don't know if this is the time or...
we're going to be talking about that, I think, in executive session.
I don't want to discuss it under executive session, what I want to say, and it's too bad there's nobody here from the union. No, I'm going to say it now, I just want to say it for the record.
Okay.
I mean, there's no secret to anybody on these boards that I've served with, or any of the Bristol County ratepayers or anything. I'm probably the biggest supporter of the union and the employees here. But I've never seen anything as arrogant and
Unbelievable.
self-aggrandizing as this correspondence. And poorly written. I mean, my granddaughter going into 5th grade at the Rockwell School could prepare something more presentable than that. But I just wanted to say, that I'm sorry there's nobody here from the union, that I wanted to
They're at a union meeting.
I wanted to give them a little
Peace of mind.
warning or something that they should distance themselves as fast and as far as they can from this guy. And just do their, if they have to come here themselves to discuss things with us. Because they're even going to put a person like me in the corner that I can't come up and support them. I've never seen anything like this. And I think, and it doesn't just go to Pam, it goes to the board. It's a talk to
Right.
the
And it's all,
board.
he sent everything to the
Everybody.
council.
And-
His idea is intimidate everybody.
And they're good workers, they're good people. And he's not going to do them any great service. He may win one big case for them and big show, but in the long run, he's going to ruin their reputation with the people in Bristol County. And I'm going to make that point to them when I see any of them individually. I'm going to tell them that. But I wanted that to go on our record. That's my feeling, because I'm a big supporter of theirs. And I hate to see somebody like this who has no, and Ray, I have to say, if he's an example of Washington, I have to agree with you sometimes. At least in this case. But he's not a government person.
I agree 100%.
I just can't believe it.
I never seen such a letter written. It sounded to me like a schoolyard vote.
Exactly.
I agree completely, and I think if the union does nothing about curbing him, they are supporting this tactic.
Well, but let's not get ahead of the game. Because
Yeah,
the
we don't know
union
what
is
the union,
meeting.
we don't know what the union has
The
done.
union is meeting, and I think we owe it to them to let them go through their process and then come back to us with what they want to say before we take any other action. or
But I didn't mind that going on the public record, because I've never seen anything like that. That's really.
I'm glad you included it in the information to the town council also.
Oh, yes, we want to make sure that they got everything.
It shows to me, it shows an attitude of someone who's not truly out there to negotiate in good faith. That's what bothers me about it.
And John's point about how it reflects on the rest of the union. There are members of my town council who do not want this organization to exist, and he just feeds right into them.
No.
And it's just, if they don't do as you suggest and distance themselves from him, it could have very bad repercussions.
Well, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens. Any other questions about Pam's report?
No.
I have one on the MIS update. Sue,
I
go ahead.
go along with the MIS, quite a bit of training that has to be done. And I noticed when Pam mentioned about the public records request that they're going to have to use some operations people to assist in doing this. Is this going to interfere with all the training that your people need to do?
Well, we've been doing a lot of training, but there's been a lot of work involved in running the two systems and getting all the data into the new system so it's all up to date. I know Mark's group has been spending a lot of time trying to get everything finalized because we're going live as of August 1st. Meanwhile, one of our meter reading systems went down, and they've been entering some of the data by hand. So yes, it's going to interfere somewhat with trying to search for the materials. It's going to be very time consuming, and then the copying. We'll probably bring somebody over from operations to help with the copying, but it's the office staff that really needs to search for all the materials. Part of the problem with the old system, our Flintstones system, is the fact that after 1 year, all the data gets dumped. There is no more computerized data for a lot of the information that the union was looking for. They actually have to go back through the actual records stored in the basement to determine where some of this information can be found. And then they may have to go, like they were looking for all of the payments that were over $5,000. Normally that would be fairly easy to find, except with our system, everything is put in all of the same categories. So you have to go through every single payment in the organization just to pull out the ones that are over $5,000. Mark, you
I'll
have a
answer
comment?
Ray's question more directly. Depending on what we have to do for next Wednesday, yes, it will have an impact on the training. Definitely.
What's it
We're going live Friday.
What's this going to have an impact on overtime? You're going to have to pay people overtime?
Even with that, I mean, we have software people coming in for the week. Even at that, we're expecting late nights without this added problem. So I would say it most definitely, depending on the extent of what happens at a meeting tonight, if they pursue to have us continue next week for the second phase of the request.
They are meeting tonight?
They're right over there right now.
Oh, what is over here?
But there
They
is
said they
a,
start at 4:30, 4 o'clock over there.
the law does allow for an extension of 20 days under special circumstances. So I think in some of these circumstances, we'll be able to
Is this going to be
meet that.
discussed in executive session? I mean, what is the basis for what he's looking for? Got to do with...
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Oh,
Just-
I mean, it's not, he's just trying to aggravate us or what? It's not, I understand he has a right to it.
Yeah.
But does it really pertain to something that they're questioning?
It's a material, whether,
He's just asking for information.
It's intimidation.
We don't even have the right to ask that question.
Right.
No, well,
so I would rather we not.
okay, we will, all right.
On the MIS report, the customer portal, I'm a little confused by what I read there. Would it make sense to use directors' addresses to experiment with that, to make sure it's working right?
The customer portal would be where the customers would go, they could check their bills and whatever.
Right.
So it's going to, there'll be a lot of beta testing going on in August before, and then September 1st, I think Randy calls it a soft opening. That we probably by September 1st we'll have.
Well, I guess
we can have the board go in and try to get in and check the balances.
my reference was analogous to when we started with the new meters years ago.
Right.
And the automatic readers. We used the directors' homes to install and train the people that came into our homes. And I had meter number 4 because they came in and they were training and they changed it over, to make it work right. And I'm just saying, let the directors be the ones that you
Right.
experiment with.
I mean, I'll give an example. Going live August 1st doesn't mean that all the bells and whistles are turned on.
Okay,
So the basis of billing, getting the bills out, being able to get a report from the system on revenue for the day,
okay.
the basics will be started. And then we just can't do everything at the same time.
No, I understand.
And some of the stuff we're still working on some bugs and how things are done and how we get the information for the Water Protection Act, how we get the information to prepare those reports. So there's a lot of little things, but as far as doing the reading, producing a bill, getting the bill out, getting information to the general ledger as far as revenues and balances. That'll be started, but it'll probably be a good, 60 days before we turn on all the switches.
Okay. Any other questions anyone has? All right, the financial report, which we received before, now we have it. This is with the modifications, some modifications, right?
As we mentioned, we've been sidetracked a lot the last few weeks on many things, and a lot of this I put together this morning. And basically, from the lengthy, detailed reports that I showed last month, these are more of a summarized or what they call collapsed report that basically breaks things down into just major categories. So if you read the cover letter that I put in there, I talked about some of the things, and what I think, I've been talking to Joel, and I think probably we'll meet with the Finance Committee before the next board meeting. Any inputs I think you could give to Joel, and then we'll sit down and fine-tune exactly if this collapsed version or summary version
If
is
there's anything anyone wants to see that they don't see here, get the notes to me and I'll give them tomorrow.
right. I mean, if anybody wanted detail, like on these, I do have the one that's for the first quarter, actual versus budget. This is the detail one. It's like 4 pages. The new one's 1 page. So in some categories have 20 items that shrink down to 1. The large ones are kind of like purchase of water, are pretty much are there, as is labor for the groups. And we are not surprisingly, but we are very, very close to budget on major, whether it's revenue, salaries, purchase of water. We're all within a very small variance of what budget is, so we know we're on track pretty well.
Take credit while credit is due.
Don't say surprising. Say, of course we are.
Of course we are. But there are some categories that we're under budget. Professional fees, we're way under budget. Legal fees have been down under, but they may rebound over the course of the year to recapture some of that. But if there's any comments, whatever, if you want to pass it through Joel, and then I'm sure we'll meet with the committee.
We're going to work on fine tuning this. This is a work in progress. Yeah.
About whatever we want to do.
But I don't want to
And
overburden you with everything else that's going on. So
the other items that we talked about at the last meeting, getting copies of the union contracts with the changes highlighted. I've got the copies. I haven't had time to go back and kind of highlight that. I'm looking for some letters I presented to the board at the last contract that highlighted that. It would save me some time. I still got the Blue Cross summary plan with the associated costs. The variance numbers, we'll work on that when we meet with the committee. And then the OPEB issue of compensation costs per employee. But a lot of that's in the works. I've started some of it, but not available right now. And Pam mentioned we've been working with TD Bank. We've got through all the due diligence, which they are happy with all the answers so far, so everything's progressing well right now with that. And that's it. Any other questions?
Well, people will review it in this new form. If they come back to Joel, and we'll keep moving. Thank you.
We're good. Wow. Getting short, John.
That's all right.
that was my first instruction.
Amendment of bylaws pursuant, this is the material you emailed to us. We have that in a hard copy, so we'll take whatever is necessary.
I have that in resolutions for you if they're approved.
we're ready to go, that's the next item, right?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Do it.
So I emailed you out the changes. The changes just reflect the latest amendment to the enabling legislation which restores the secretary and treasurer.
That was a one-liner, as I recall.
So yeah, so in the bylaws, I sent you the marked up versions via email. First paragraph just adds the secretary and treasurer to the number of officers. Paragraph 2 indicates that the secretary and treasurer shall be elected by a vote of the majority of the board. And I restored in paragraph 3 the powers of the secretary and treasurer from the original bylaws. And so those are the other changes.
What's the correct form of a motion?
Just a motion to amend the bylaws as submitted. I'll then have you sign the resolution. It attaches the bylaws.
Goes in the minutes.
And those are going in the minutes.
All right. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
A second, any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. It is unanimous. Next one. Is that it? No.
That's it.
That's it.
Then when we're done, I'll have you sign what you have to sign.
Okay. Election of the board secretary and the treasurer.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask who was serving at the last point when this was eliminated? Does anybody have a record of? Frank was the treasurer.
Frank was the treasurer.
With the,
Was it Bill?
Kevin Fitter was secretary.
That's correct.
Kevin. Well, Mr. Chairman, I don't know, but I want to go backwards. I want to say that Frank was the treasurer. And Frank was legally on the documents.
Right.
I think it would be much easier for us to just retain Frank as the treasurer in that position. So I move the election of Frank Sylvia as treasurer.
I want to bring up for discussion purposes, if nothing else, there are members of my town council who have been vocal about keeping it contracted. And I'm not taking a position on it, but I would not be doing my due diligence of saying, is it not prudent to just keep double up on the 2 offices rather than extending it to the extra people? I'm not taking a position, but it's something that it's imperative that it be on the record that we discussed, since there are members of my board. Item number 4 represent their positions. So
I take your point.
May I clarify, what you're saying is that not have separate people hold those positions?
there are members of my board who very much feel that they want to contract things, not even a majority.
Give me an example.
You would have a president be the president and the secretary, and the vice president be the treasurer and the vice president.
Okay, thank you.
Not increase the amount of officers. That is their position. I have effectively presented it.
I understand the point, but since it's not costing us any money,
Do you understand what the reason was that they need contracted?
I think I understand the reason that the two of them wanted to do it. I don't think they would appreciate my putting it on the record. They want very much to contract the whole organization, and this is one step. Their position was that when the positions were removed, they did it with a purpose, and their purpose was to contract it. I see the point of having a treasurer as being very important for the purpose of signatures, but we have to, I feel that we have to at least say it and then do what we're going to do anyway.
I agree with you. I mean, I frankly think in an organization of 32 people, having that many officers is somewhat absurd.
It's a point. It's certainly a legitimate point, but it's something that the board needs to discuss and decide.
Well, if I may, for clarification, the way it was stated that the duties of the treasurer and secretary were keeping, a lot had to do with maintaining records.
No.
Isn't that what it said?
I was never, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
Never, my only responsibility as treasurer is once a year, letter and had to indicate that I was an officer at the treasurer. And that's the way it was set up. So one year I said, listen, someone else can be treasurer. And legal counsel said, well, that's fine and dandy, but it would cost, in order to do that, it would cost some money to take my name off and the corporate papers and put someone else's name on. Since my only responsibility once a year was to,
Can we ask Joe for his opinion as to what we might do? I mean, you understand the point that's been made by Joe?
Yeah, I mean, if you want, I think what Joel said is that they would prefer to have the chairman be the secretary and the vice chairman be the treasurer. If you wanted to do it a different way and also contract it, you could appoint the same person as secretary and treasurer.
And then do three, you could do
So now
that.
you have three.
But that's an opinion of
A minority of one
a
council.
town council,
A
or
minority.
a town council, a minority of a town council.
Yes.
We're the ones
Oh, you can,
trusted to set it up.
you can put it on the floor.
Any organization I've ever belonged to, I don't care if it was 10 members, they had a president, vice president, secretary, and a treasurer. I don't see where we're bogging ourselves down with any additional big group.
No, I think Joel's just bringing up for discussion.
I understand that. I understand that completely. I got his whole, I got the drift of his whole.
It's a simple majority, and for these two positions, it's a simple majority.
And also,
I'm sorry.
I was
So
gonna say,
that's not five
no-
votes, that's a majority of people.
Majority of the people here.
Nothing against
Four.
any other member, or especially with Frank, but generally, in a lot of circumstances, the financial chairperson is also the treasurer. So if they wanted to consolidate it in that way, that would be one way of doing it as well.
I have no, believe me, I have
You know,
at all.
Is there any,
As long as there's no cost involved in doing it.
Joe, is there any cost to us if someone is named other than,
This whole issue is simply because if you were gonna have to change the bond document, so it doesn't matter.
so as long as you have a treasurer?
Just have one, that's all you need.
Okay, okay.
Well, my motion stands that Frank Sylvia be.
Are there any other nominations?
No nomination.
here, I thought you liked me.
No, I mean, it makes sense to put the.
It does, and I'll tell you,
I appreciate it, John, very much.
and Frank, I appreciate the thought, but two things that maybe it wouldn't be a good idea. Thing one is I'm running for state representative, and there are most people who think I'm a 20-1 long shot. Some of my friends think I'm a 6-1 long shot. But even if I should lose that election, my term ends in February. And in the course of running for the election, it is possible that I may alienate certain members of my town council and not get reappointed. And that is a distinct possibility. So since it does cost money to change,
No, only that we have a treasurer.
no, I know, but if you change, someone else becomes treasurer, you may be looking at that in February. I appreciate the good thought. I'm perfectly happy being who I am.
In that case, I'll withdraw my.
How is it?
I'm finishing off
Oh, you're just
previous
finishing up
term,
this.
and just knowing our town council, and it's going to change somewhat, but I may have to do things in the election that will anger certain members of my town council.
All right, good.
I still have not a concern. I really don't care who holds the position. My problem is the clarification of what the heck the individuals do that hold those office. To me, when reading it, I couldn't understand, well, if I was in that position, what would be my duties and responsibilities?
Don't you
You're
have-
shaking your head, does that mean you don't really have any?
None.
No.
Okay, so
Virtually none. So this, that's why you should just put this on a vote. And it really was just.
Organizational in nature.
It was really just for the bond document.
All right.
All right, so now,
That clarification.
we only have one member left, you withdrew the
Yeah, I
nomination.
know that.
So we have one member left, no further, so all in favor of the slate as presented, Frank Sylvia as treasurer, raise your hand.
Excuse me, is he going to be treasurer or secretary and treasurer?
Right now, it's just treasurer.
Just,
If he becomes secretary, we That's another vote.
That's a
So
team.
it's unanimous. Frank is the treasurer. Okay, now the matter of secretary. You've made your point. You've made a point that it could be one and the same. We have 3 officers instead of 4 officers, whatever. What's the pleasure of the board?
Ray Palmieri for secretary.
Okay,
That way every community.
Ray is secretary. Any other nominations?
Motion, the nominations be closed.
Don't have to. All
That's on like a railroad.
who was the second? And we don't really need a
Not for
second.
nominations.
And we don't really have to close the nominations
No.
if there's no more. So all those in
Just
favor
trying to
of
move things
Ray,
along.
raise your hand. You're not going to vote for yourself. You have to.
Okay.
No.
Unanimous.
I didn't hear you.
We wanted to make it a landslide.
Exactly.
Now, when you go to the council, you can say, you're the secretary, Bill's the vice chairman, I don't have to answer any questions.
Okay, we're all set.
I got to say, I brought up your
Ray.
point.
You did.
I got to say.
I think the secretary helps make copies for the union stuff.
Oh, I forgot that.
I'll be in on overtime.
Okay.
W.
H, bid award for the cleaning and structural lining of Melrose Avenue. You have a recommendation for Walsh, and we had attached material that Sue prepared. Any discussion?
Is this the same Waltz that's doing the work there now?
It is, same company.
Yeah.
I make motion, Mr. Chairman, to award to the lowest responsible bidder, W. Walsh Company, in the amount of $419,573.02.
Second.
Any discussion? Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It is done.
That's an Italian neighborhood, and they're gonna use Canadian company? That's for one, not them.
Bid award on scanner printer.
Move to approve as presented.
That's for 9585. It's from In Stock Design.
Did you have a
Include
printer
that.
before, a scanner, or what was it?
Pardon me?
You didn't have a printer or scanner before, correct?
No, we had a printer, but it was old and it died.
So this
But
way
we
you
don't
take
have
the
a
big
scanner.
plans and scan them?
This is a
Yes.
large size
Sorry, yeah.
scanner.
Wow.
What did you do before? You just didn't download them on?
Can you
We,
do,
we
We go to
would,
the copy store.
yeah, we run down to the store.
can you do big, huge portraits of the board members?
Okay.
Put them across the back.
Full size.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those- It's unanimous.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Don't
Okay,
get
the
caught in the
line of
scam.
credit. We have this, it's really
The
the
Christmas party.
use of the line of credit, right? We ought to-
Temporary use.
Don't bring that
Yes.
up.
We have a line of credit, but
Yeah,
Right.
Chairman, I just have, after looking at Mark's report about bond possibly being ready sometime in September, I'm a little hesitant to wipe out the line of credit with the bond coming.
The whole point is to get us until we get the bond funds. Once we get the bond funds, we're paying it back.
repay them.
Well, I know that, is there a need, is there such a need to wipe out the line of credit now, or? with the
Yes,
bond
because we've got Papa Squash payments and the Walsh payments on Maple that are due in August.
And those payments, if we didn't have, again, I just have a problem of doing business, day-to-day business, paying contractors from the line of credit without having a line item to pay for it. And if it's tied into a $9 million bond, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Both of these projects.
But Frank,
One is the
you
clean water and the other is
responded to
the-
Doodle like everybody else. We can't get together to have the approval to sign the papers. We're now pushed off until September 11th before we can even do it. We would have done it much sooner, but we can't get all the people to come together. That's the problem.
Frank,
My concern is just wiping out the line of credit and having to wait for the bond, and then something happens.
How long's the time frame between?
Frank, I actually asked Pam to put that on, because I'm kind of projecting out my cash, and the bills that we would need to pay in August, depending, we haven't got them yet, but we're gonna get them within a week, or some of these, they're gonna be pretty hefty. Could be up to about $1 million that we're gonna have to pay. And I have money in some of my reserves to cover some of it, but I wanted this just as a safety net to pay, so we're not delinquent on paying the vendor. And then we have provisions in the bond to repay anything. They know we may use our line of credit, and that we will have provisions in the bond to pay that back. So I pursued, I asked Pam to put that in, because, again, like Alan said, you guys need to be around. If you're not around, we're stuck. We haven't, you know, we're...
To answer your question, Alan, I responded that I would be here.
Yeah, it's likely we won't even have a meeting in August, because.
My
may-
concern was wiping out the line of credit.
Right.
If something happens, we go for the line of credit, it's not there. So we'll roll the dice and
Hopefully, we can juggle things and not have to use it.
Well, we're really looking at just a 1 month turnaround in this case.
So you're looking at it as the last resort, is that what you're saying? You're gonna wait till the
Well,
last
I gotta
minute?
wait and see. I don't know the exact amount of these bills coming in. You know, we'll probably get a bill for this month, which is due by, say, September 1st. And if I think we're voting on the 11th, we have so we may not get it approved, all done till maybe close to the 20th of September. And then it's gonna take probably another week before we can draw funds on it. So
you're really asking for approval,
Yeah,
in case you have to use it.
right, the line of
I don't
credit.
really know for
The
sure.
line of credit allows the director to take up to $50,000
Right.
without the board. Anything over that. So I asked it as a safety net, that the
Okay.
board knows that we may need to draw on it, and that they approve it. And then, once this is over, we can remove that approval if we want to, and go back to,
so the motion,
temporary safety net.
the motion that I'll entertain is for the board approval to use the full amount of the $500,000 in the line of credit temporarily.
Up to.
Yeah, up to 500, well,
so you have to, you
up
only
to
have,
500,000, the full
no,
amount,
you already spent 25,000 of it.
50,
Oh, 50.
Yeah, I have up to 450
Up to
Yeah.
450 instead of
which
5.
is the remaining amount,
remaining.
Yeah, but you said up to 5.
because that's the whole
Okay.
line. What I said. All right,
Yeah,
anyway.
but I would clarify to say 450.
Okay,
I'll make that motion.
a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, it was unanimous.
No.
Oh, one voted against, okay. Resolution regarding the Clean Water Finance Agency.
Actually, we did not need one. We weren't clear as to if the board would need to pass the resolution at this meeting, but
Okay.
we won't need to until the next one.
All right, so Kate is out with the professional liability insurance.
That, getting a lot of conflicting information, but we may need to pursue our own professional engineering insurance, and it might be through the Society of Professional Engineers. It might have the best rates, so we'll have to take a look at that. But I talked with a couple of different agencies, and most don't do much plans of their own internally. They usually hire outside consultants. So they don't always, they would review documents, they would do some minor documents themselves, which they don't have to stamp. But our issue is getting, when we have to, the Department of Health has in their bylaws that we would need to submit professionally signed documents for approval. So we would need to continue to do that. So that's something we'll have to pursue as to what we can do, perhaps,
So we'll have a report maybe in September.
right,
Okay,
another organization.
Aren't engineers self-insured?
Not normal.
Okay, board
Professional
correspondence.
people.
We have that. I guess the next thing is to go into executive session in accordance with Rhode Island General Law 4245-6-2, which is litigation regarding the state DOT and collective bargaining. We will come out of that meeting. We'll be taking likely any further action afterward.
Should we set our next board meeting
Yeah.
before we go into
Yeah.
executive session?
Yes, we will.
Well, we're looking at 9/11.
Right. We're
Which is
looking
a
at
Thursday?
no meeting in August, unless there's an emergency session.
9/11?
9/11.
9/10 is a special board meeting.
We're
9/11.
going to
Do it at 9/11.
9/11.
change it at
It
9/10.
says 9/10 and it's
That's right.
9/11. And then we would adjourn. So there'll be no meeting, right now, there's no planned meeting in August. And we'll come out of executive session. If we have to take any action formally, it will be done at that time. Do you anticipate?
I don't think there's anything we need to vote on now.
Okay? So on either of those two items. So then we'll come out of that and we will adjourn the meeting thereafter with no further information on no further action by the board. So, someone,
I'll make that motion.
the motion has been made on those two items. A second?
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand. It's clear that everybody voted for that. And so effective 3 minutes to 7, we're going to executive session.
Pam, do you know what day 9/11 is? Wednesday, Thursday?
Thursday. We tried for the Wednesday, but we couldn't.